Welcome back to On to the next thing. I'm trying to, this is a semi-emergency recording because I need to get this out of my head before I lose it, because I already got rid of the book that I was trying to review, which is the Overstory by Richard Powers. That's not the only thing that we're going to be talking about today, but I need to get my thoughts out on this book because it was like 500 pages, and I need to remember why I was trying to shit on it and for what reasons. This is going to be, you might say, hey, you're not qualified to do that. This guy's a Pulitzer Prize winner, but I'm telling you, I have something here. You just got to listen, okay? But before we do that, we got to get into the bird news. All right, headlines today. All of them really fucking boring and lame from my brief read-through, but we're going to find the good ones, okay? Something crazy happened during the spring's bird migration in Maine from the Bangor Daily News. Blah, 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 blah. Let me read the article. Dude. Oh my God, I can't read it. It's like paywalled. Why would they paywall the Bangor Daily News? Oh my God, now I'm getting an ad for Somalia. Never mind, out of Maine. We're done. We're not in Maine anymore. Sorry, never mind. We'll never find out what crazy thing happened during the bird migration in Maine. Another, Portland. Steps to prevent birds from striking windows. We already know that. We've already done this. Federally protected bird's nest holds up sale of Ford truck in Kansas. There we go. That's from The Guardian. They're still going to soft paywall me, but I can skip around them. Okay. A robin built a nest on a Ford F-250's tire and laid its eggs in it. A law prohibits removing it while inhabited by bird brood. This is by Jose Olivares from yesterday. Today being Saturday, May 23rd, 2026, just in case I didn't say it earlier. A truck sold by a Kansas dealership cannot be taken from the lot by its new owner because a family of robins is living atop one of the vehicle's tires. The relatively novel situation has gained widespread attention after a dealership in the Kansas community of Olathe wrote about it on a Facebook page, and it's perhaps taught and it perhaps taught many that active robin nests are protected by federal law from the U.S. A few weeks earlier, employees at the Olathe Ford Lincoln dealership discovered a robin building a nest on top of a tire of the truck in question. The bird laid 4 stunningly blue eggs over the next few days, the dealership wrote in the 14th of May Facebook post. The eggs hatched more recently, and the robin is caring for the baby birds, the dealership said. Video and audio published by the dealership shows the birds chirping in the nest, sitting neatly on a Ford F-250 tire. That Ford F-250, meanwhile, was bought, but the customer was not able to drive it off the lot because the robin and its eggs fall under a 1918 U.S. wildlife protection law known as the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. We want to give a huge thank you to our incredibly kind and understanding customers who have been so patient and thoughtful while we wait for these little ones to grow up and eventually leave the nest safely, the dealership added in its Facebook post. Olathe Ford Lincoln also thanked Operation Wildlife, a nonprofit wildlife rehabilitation facility in Kansas, for providing what the dealership called guidance. After that post went viral, guidance in quotes. I don't know why I get the feeling of irony. Okay. One of the employees of the dealership made a video of the bird family that showed how much the hatchlings had grown in just a few days. They also named the birds Lugnut, Turbo, Diesel, and Axel. So what made you guys join Olathe Ford Lincoln, the employees asked the birds in the video. A text graphic purporting to be the bird's subtitled response read, "We were looking for a dealership with strong values and minimal hawk traffic." According to a report from the local news outlet KMBC, the dealership has found other animals such as cats and possums living in some of its vehicles. It's read 6 articles this year at this dangerous time. Well, you know what? That's like a nice little Good Morning America style bird news article. It's not birds dying. It's just, it's a fun little marketing ploy. Well, I guess marketing opportunity, not a ploy, because they didn't plan this, but I think they're actually reacting to it the right way. I just don't know why this is in the fucking Guardian. But I guess the Guardian in the U.S. doesn't really have that much to go on anymore, There's just nothing happening in the world today. Anyway, good for bird news. Wall Street Journal, that's a book review. I'm already doing a book review. Fuck all that. European Commission. EU's bird and butterfly populations are declining. That's sad. Why is that happening? Climate change? Definitely. Sustainable Development Goal, life on land, blah, 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 blah. Forest, oof. Yep. Declining over time. That sucks. Scientists shined UV light on world's most dangerous bird and found a hidden glow. This is good. ZME Science. They're always there for me when I'm at my lowest. This is from May 21st. So this is a couple days ago by TB Pugh. Yeah, something like that. Edited and reviewed by Zoe Gordon. On a warm night in Florida, Todd Green walked up to a 6-foot-tall cassowary named Ginger with a flashlight and a strange expectation. The light was ultraviolet, invisible to human eyes. Green, an anatomist and paleontologist at the New York Institute of Technology College of Osteopathic Medicine at Arkansas State University, holy shit, wanted to know whether the bird's casque, C-A-S-Q-U-E, the helmet-like structure rising from its head, would glow. The owner with him was skeptical. I went out with one of the owners that night, and he was actually kind of making fun of me because he didn't think anything was going to happen, Green told National Geographic. Then the light hit Ginger's head. It was one of the brightest fluorescences I've ever seen, he said. I audibly gasped. Green's new study now shows that cassowary casques, which look dull compared to the bird's electric blue necks and red wattles, can blaze in green-blue patterns under ultraviolet light. The finding does not prove that cassowaries use those patterns to communicate, but it suggests that one of the strangest structures in the bird world may look far more dramatic to cassowaries than it does to us. Subtitle: A dull helmet that was never really a helmet. Cassowaries already have a fearsome reputation. Native to the rainforests of Australia and New Guinea, they can weigh more than 140 pounds and carry dagger-like claws. They're often described among the world's most dangerous birds. In tropical forests, cassowaries swallow fruits whole and spread seeds across the landscape through their feces. They didn't say that part, but that's what it implies, because that's how they do it, helping maintain the forest itself. But it's their casques that have puzzled scientists. It's a bizarre structure, Green told National Geographic. When you see it, it kind of looks more like a horn, but really is nothing like any horns that animals have. The casque has been proposed as a tool for defense, heat regulation, sound production, or display. But it's not a sturdy battle helmet. It is a bony structure covered in keratin, the same family of proteins found in human hair and fingernails. Both male and female cassowaries have them, which also makes simple explanations based on male competition less convincing. The new study tested whether the casque might be more visually important than it first appears. Many birds can see ultraviolet light, a slice of the spectrum beyond human vision. Feathers, bills, and other body parts that look plain to us can carry signals that birds may detect. Cassowaries, like other ancient lineages of birds, have visual pigments that suggest sensitivity in the UV range. Green and his colleagues examined 95 adult cassowaries, including preserved museum specimens and living birds. They exposed casques from other 3 living cassowary species, the dwarf, southern, and northern cassowary, to ultraviolet light at 365 nanometers and 385 to 395 nanometers. Southern and northern cassowaries showed strong fluorescence across large areas of the casque. Dwarf cassowaries, whose casques are typically black or dark gray, showed little to none. Moreover, southern cassowaries tended to glow toward the rear of the casque. Northern cassowaries showed different patterns, sometimes patchy and sometimes covering most of the structure. A clue for living birds and extinct dinosaurs. Like all birds, cassowaries are technically avian dinosaurs. Their prehistoric headgear may offer some clues about how some dinosaurs may have used fluorescence. Cassowaries are among the best living analogs of many extinct kinds of dinosaurs, said Darren Naish, a paleozoologist at the University of Southampton who was not involved in the research. Paleontologists often look to cassowaries when thinking about the crests and ornaments of extinct dinosaurs, including some hadrosaurs and oviraptors. Those structures may have helped animals recognize one another, attract mates, intimidate rivals, or display status. But fossils rarely preserve the soft tissues and colors that would have shaped how those ornaments looked in life. If we can come to understand what modern animals are using this strange headgear for, Green told Science, we can take it back to the fossil record to better understand extinct dinosaurs. If cassowaries can detect these signals in the wild, the casque may stand out during displays. Cassowaries stretch their necks and raise their bodies in ritualized encounters, making the casque the highest point of the animal's profile. In a dim forest where green leaves absorb much UV light, a UV reflective casque could create contrast at dawn, dusk, or under filtered canopy light. Okay. That could help cassowaries judge size, age, identity, or species. It could also help them avoid dangerous fights. A clear signal can be useful when 2 large territorial birds meet and neither benefits from injury. The authors note that their work does not directly prove that casques function as species signals. Cassowaries may see broad UV contrast from the casque, not the detailed glowing patches captured in the lab. Or the patterns may arise from the structure or chemistry of keratin without serving a social purpose. Still, the findings are a good reminder that animals often live in visual worlds humans cannot see or even comprehend. Flowers, feathers, fish, and even some mammals can carry ultraviolet or fluorescent cues that only become obvious when researchers look beyond human color vision. The glow may also help humans. Because the fluorescence remains visible in old museum specimens, curators could use UV light to identify incomplete or faded cassowary specimens. Field researchers might one day use UV-sensitive cameras to distinguish individuals, much as whale researchers identify humpbacks by tail flukes. This is one of those huge, high-profile, career-defining discoveries, Naish told National. I guess so. You know what? Good for him. I laughed, but that was not out of disrespect. That was just out of ignorance, we'll say. It's a very, very good set of results. The next step is harder than shining a flashlight in the dark. Scientists need to test whether cassowaries actually respond to UV cues under natural rainforest light. Until then, Ginger's glowing casque remains a tantalizing glimpse of a hidden signal, one that was always there, waiting for the right eyes to see it. All right, that's a pretty good article, and also ties into the theme of the book that I read recently, the Overstory. Signals that humans cannot comprehend or even sense in any real way, except some people can in the book, and it's a whole thing. All right, let's get into it. Let's get right into it, because I don't want to lose it, because I read it. I finished it a couple days ago, and I'm already reading some other stuff. I have the Wikipedia summary open open for me. I wish I had the book with me, because it kind of makes me sound like I'm not actually reading any of these books when I just read off the Wikipedia summary. But what I really just need is to have like the main character list in front of me so I can remember who I'm talking about. Okay, so I'll start right off. I don't think that this book is I don't think that it was bad. All right, we'll start with that. It's not like I'm not gonna totally trash it. I'm not gonna be like, ooh, this is dog shit, this is bad. But I do think it shows how in the changing media and information landscape, things become outdated and past their prime a lot faster than they would have, say, like 10, 20 years ago. Of course, there's still some works that are timeless, like, a lot of the classics, Jane Austen and Charles Dickens to an extent, Mary Shelley, Frankenstein. Like, there are stories that remain timeless because the themes are timeless, and then the story can still remain compelling and palatable to the average reader. And there's some elements to that in the Overstory. Like, it does have some very timeless themes running through it. About the finiteness of the human experience, and how we're all too focused on ourselves to see like the bigger picture of the universe and the natural world around us and things like that. And I would say that to both the average reader and to people who are more focused in kind of general literary fiction and who are following the Pulitzer Prize for literature, I think that it's probably a very eye-opening and compelling book for people with that sort of background, and reading and hearing about like all of the admittedly fascinating and incredibly complex ecological relationships between trees and humans and the greater biosphere and general life on Earth. I imagine it would be extremely eye-opening to them if they haven't really looked into much of that before, which is also what I saw on some of the little Reddit book forum comments coming in being like, I never really looked at trees this way. And it's like, I bet that when my dad recommended this book to me a couple years ago, and so I put it on my reading list, I bet he felt the same way, where he wasn't looking at trees the same. It makes me wonder if that's why he's more interested in having a big wild yard today. It could have been a very inspiring book for him. And I will say that is one of the book's strengths. It does make you, because the writing is very good. The writing is very good from like a pretty writing and imagery standpoint. It really helps you visualize these things that are happening in the book. And there's also like some good lessons to be drawn from. There's some good themes where it's like, it would be good if humanity wasn't so human-centric in the grand scheme of like dealing with stuff like climate change and environment, and paying more attention to how the natural world actually works, so we can work within it to be more sustainable and to live within the biosphere rather than destroying our own habitat, basically. Not to step on my soapbox here, I'm obviously a very politically and environmentally neutral party. I think that both the clear-cutters and the environmentalists have good points. Boom! Neutral. Yeah, but fuck it. I mean, I agree with the sentiments of the author, and the problem with me is that I actually agree too much. And this is when the idea of the book being a little bit, dated. Yeah, that's crazy to me, because it was published in 2018. I thought the book's, like, the cover said 2019, but that might have just been that version of it with the pretty ring-shaped design on the cover. But yeah, it was published 2018, 2019, but based on kind of the environmental politics described, and kind of some of the ideas about technology and things like that, it already feels outdated. And that's because unfortunately, the main weak point of this book is the plot and a few of its characters, although some of the characters are actually pretty interesting and well written and have, like, major roles in the book. But I think, to me, based on my single reading, admittedly, I think that this is something that would have been good as perhaps a collection of related short stories, and then maybe you use different characters for the rest of the novel. I'm going to spoil it because, like I said, the plot is the weakest point of this book. I do recommend that you read it for the literary value, but there are going to be some spoilers from this point moving forward. Right? So the book can be, is split up into, like, 4 chunks. Let me just see. Plot summary. The plot summary doesn't break it up, but there's like 4 stages. There's, like, seeds, roots, or no, there's, like, roots, like roots, trunk, canopy, and seeds, or something like that. It's parts of a tree, and it's, like, shows, like, kind of like the cycle of the trees and stuff like that. And the problem is, to me, the first part is the best, because similar to, I believe I've reviewed Hyperion at some point. Like, maybe early on I talked about it, like, maybe in the very early episodes of this podcast. But Hyperion by Dan Simmons, who recently died after essentially ruining his reputation by becoming a massive Islamophobe. But he didn't ruin his literary reputation, because he's still a very strong writer. But that was one of the things that was really cool about Hyperion, is because it was a number of really tight, well-written, kind of like longer short stories or novellas kind of fused together into a novel. And then that was the book. And then there's, like, a little framing story on each end to show, like, okay, this is all of them together now after each of their stories have happened. And the problem is that with the Overstory is that it has this, and it even has kind of the framing, like, it has little introduction things with, like, italics, and I believe it kind of shows the perspective of one of the characters where they are now. But the frame story, and then, like, the 6, like, short story sized pieces for each main character are are just the first part of the book. And then the second and third parts of the book are all the characters coming together to do, or no, not to do, to fail at environmental activism. And this is why I really, if you really want to read the book, go read it. Do not take my word for it right now. But this is going to be spoiling, because I just need to talk about this. Like I said, the first part, very good. It reminds me of Hyperion, except it's just like, instead of each of the stories of each of the characters on their own worlds in the universe, it's each character having some sort of, admittedly, very major and very emotionally written family tragedies, and then also their relationship with trees. And then kind of the overarching theme is how trees have kind of a different, they have a different sense of time and balance with the natural world. And so they'll, like, they can go dormant as seeds for, like, hundreds or thousands of years, and then grow again, and then cycle out, and then filter their nutrients and their signals and everything back into the rest of the forest. And lots of cool stuff that's based on real forest science. And that part is cool. And learning about the trees and things, very cool. But then it's like, and each of the characters kind of gets a story related to trees and kind of their background, and how it's usually like they have something where they have an interest, and then it's either encouraged or it's rejected, and they all kind of each become a little bit disillusioned with human life in their own ways. And this kind of comes into play later because it just feels well, let's get through this. First part, very cool. It sets all the people up into like their roles. It's like you have I guess in order we can talk about it here. Douglas Pavlicek, he's a Vietnam War pilot who he goes into the Stanford. He actually starts out, we first see him go into the Stanford prison experiment, where he kind of gets to see like kind of how people operate and how they can be so easily just like pushed to do shitty things and selfish things and so he kind of gets that seed, wow, planted in his brain. And then during the war, his plane crashes while he's like, I guess he's like a supply guy, so we don't have to feel good when he falls out of the sky, because he's not a guy dropping bombs on people. He's just like picking up supplies. But he gets shot down, and then his life and the life of his crew are saved by a big like banyan tree in the jungle in like Laos, and so he basically goes on to become like, he tries to be working for the Forest Service, replanting clear-cut forests, but then he realizes after someone tells him that, oh no, I'm actually helping the lumber companies by giving them a tax credit by planting these monocrops that don't actually rebuild the forest. Oh man, I've really been working for the man the whole time. Oh shit. And so that's how he turns to the environmental activism. And then you have Olivia Vandergriff, which is by far the weirdest one, where she has like a near-death experience. She maybe or maybe doesn't have like a communication with like, I don't know, like kind of the trees like signals themselves, like it kind of, because she gets like electrocuted, she gets like privy to all like the electrical signals of trees or something like that. Like that's what is kind of made to make you think. And it's like it is kind of like one of those Paul Tremblay situations where it's like you don't really know if it's real or not real, but initially most of the characters she runs into believe her because she's just saying all of these really interesting, profound things. And so, but she's just kind of like whatever. She's like a college student, and she was really self-centered until she got electrocuted, and now she's like, oh, now I know it's the trees and human life and pleasures don't matter all that much. Yeah. And then we get to I guess just in the list in Wikipedia here. This isn't the order of their intros. But probably the most interesting character is the one based on a real person, and that's Patricia Westford, who's a botanist / ecologist who essentially does research that finds that trees are communicating with each other, but she gets stomped down by the old male patriarchy research people at her university, and basically just becomes a pariah for a time until she's eventually vindicated in her work by later research. And this is based on a forest ecologist named Susan Simard, who's pretty cool. And Patricia is cool because she's actually on the science side. She's not communicating directly with trees, even though she knows trees do communicate, and she understands like the profundity of that. But she's not just like some one-dimensional dumb person. Like, she doesn't like people, but she does interact with people, and she does end up working with like a research team of like-minded people, and isn't just a total asshole. Like, she gets fucked over, but then she gets like vindicated, and it's like, it's pretty cool. And but that happens later on. Next is my least favorite character, Adam Apich, who's he's like a kid who's like, really into like trees and stuff when he was young, but then like basically he gets it bullied out of him by his shitty parents and like his brother, and then decides to become just like a cold, like manipulative psychologist guy. And he also has like kind of a redemption streak, but then he still fucks it up in a part that I'm going to get to. But there's also Mimi Ma, who's the daughter of a Chinese, a Muslim Chinese Iranian descended engineer who flees China during the Civil War and comes to America with some like ancient idols, like Buddhist related idols, even though he's Muslim. And so it's like Muslim, but also has like these little Buddhist idols that I guess his family just has from integrating in Chinese society over a couple hundred years. But they all are around like a big tree that's like made of crystal or something. I don't remember it perfectly, but he has like that, and he's very like in touch with all of this stuff. And he tries to pass it on to his daughters, even though he doesn't fully understand like the message that he feels like he's getting. But eventually he kills himself, and then Mimi is like the only daughter who actually kind of like understands her father at all. And so it's her perspective for the rest of her part of the story. Then there's Nick Hole, who's like he comes from a long line of like Swedish farmers and who immigrated when like the last chestnuts, like right before like the chestnut blight. And so he plants, like his ancestor planted a chestnut tree in the yard, and then like they kept like taking photos of it as it grew up through the generations. But then then like Nick is like the last descendant, and his whole family gets killed by carbon monoxide poisoning during a winter Christmas party, which is fucking crazy. I don't know why that needed to happen, but I guess it's just so he could just become like a weird artist hermit guy with no connections to people. And then there's like kind of a odd set of characters where it's Ray Brinkman and Dorothy Cazaly, because they kind of just, their story is kind of, they have like, they meet and they're like, ooh, we want to have like an adventurous, interesting life. And Dorothy doesn't want to be like owned by Ray. And so they're married, but they're like not married. And Dorothy keeps kind of like sleeping around with him. Yeah, but their connection to trees is that they like plant like a tree in their backyard like every year or something like that. And then it kind of becomes a little more important later, and possibly also connected to Olivia's story, because Olivia is either their real or imagined daughter. And I'm not exactly sure which, and apparently no one else who read the book knows either. So that's cool. Confused yet? That's okay. You should probably just read it at this point. But finally, who ends up being kind of one of the other more important characters is Nilay Mehta, who's he's like a child programming prodigy of Indian American descent, and he's like fascinated by trees, but as like a structure for programming, and so through that he gets really good at building games, and like becomes like a really masterful programmer and game architect, and develops like his own company. And that's where all their like backstories end up, and it's like pretty cool stuff. You're like getting these ideas that they're all being influenced by possibly like trees themselves, like as like an entity, because trees are getting fucked over by people all the time, obviously, but people are also destroying the natural world, and the trees want to like either stop that or at least like work with humans to figure out a way to survive that, at least so trees can survive. And you get like that's kind of the plot. But then it's kind of like, you're like, okay, they're going to kind of be influenced by trees, and then maybe each of them are going to do some type of work that when put together is going to create like a better world, somehow, like where the trees can survive and things like that. But as it turns out, really only two of them actually do anything. And here's where things kind of turned a little sour for me, and also a little bit fucking boring as well. Right, so part 2, no longer divided up into chapters. It's one big section where character point of views are switched up with just like little breaks in the page. And it would be like, oh, page break, new character, page break, other character. And it kind of goes through each of the people's time, where they kind of learn to be more and more radical as time goes on. But the problem is, and the main problem I have with the plot of this book, is the characters, specifically Douglas, Olivia, Adam, Mimi, and Nick. Like those 5, they all end up deciding like we're gonna join the activists. We need to try and do direct action to stop logging and shit on the West Coast, and to like stop them from cutting down this like huge ancient mother tree that that Olivia has like a psychic connection to, basically, right? And so it's like, oh, cool. All right, so they're working, like they have a direct line to the trees through Olivia, and they're gonna do something smart to like figure out how to stop this, right? And it's like, no, wrong. They're actually going to fail for the next 200 pages. That's right. They I guess the author doesn't remember like the actual environmental victories where forests were preserved and the last redwoods weren't cut down. Because every single time, I guess maybe those more successful missions were happening elsewhere. But apparently these dum-dums who are like, they're our core characters for this story, but they don't have a single real environmental win the entire time. And partly it's because, to me, that like while each of the main characters are pretty well fleshed out, everyone else in the book like is basically just like a tree hating capitalist drone asshole, which, you know, in some cases is true, but I think a lot more I think a lot more people give a fuck about trees for various reasons than you might think. And like, you know, if the author, you know, and if any, I mean, the author is doing his own thing. The author is basically doing just kind of like a literary love letter to trees and how, like, you know, they're probably going to go past us. It's fine. I had the feeling that he wasn't going to go any sort of political route, when basically it was like, like, especially from Mimi's point of view, they're just kind of shitting on like the communists, which admittedly, you know, communists in China, they weren't doing stuff that was great for the environment for a while, but they were trying to, like, theoretically, in theory, give people their needs and, like, you know, not just fucking mulch all of the natural resources for capital, you know? But we ignore that part. They shit on the communists and they come to America and they're like, oh, we're going to do capitalism stuff. And it's interesting because the book is critical of capitalism. They mention capitalism as being like a part of the reason why the trees are being destroyed and the forests are being cut down. But they don't actually do anything to, like, they don't confront any of like the forces of capitalism that would make it this way. They keep like kind of bringing it down to like a human behavior level, where they're trying to get people, like, every time they have like a confrontation with like loggers or like, you know, business people or like counter protesters and things like that, they're trying to like, and probably some people who are like actual paid agitators too, but they keep trying to like persuade them with like the tree thing, where they're saying like the trees feel and stuff, and they're doing this stuff, and we can't be violent at all. We can't be violent. That's their thing. They do nonviolence. But they do nonviolence, but they also aren't really willing to be beat up that much. They seem to, they do nonviolence. Eventually, all of the characters have their own moment where they're like, oh my God, I cannot stand for these ancient trees that provide and give so much and are possibly communicating to my friend, I guess. You can't let them be destroyed. We have to stop this. We have to go, and we'll chain ourselves to the trees. Oh man, we didn't chain ourselves well enough, and the police and the loggers already know how to undo the chains. Okay, well we'll stand around and we'll stand in front of the trees, and we'll like, and they won't try and physically hurt us to get us away from their property, right? And it's like they go into activism but without knowing anything about how like, hey, how the powers that be react when people do protests and stuff like that. They're like, oh my God, the loggers here out west are a bunch of big fucking gruff working class thug dudes, and it's like, oh my God, they're waving their chainsaws at us to intimidate us. And it's like, yeah, duh. They're fucking loggers, dude. This is their livelihood. They don't know shit about the trees that you do. And frankly, even if they did, like, this is their economy, and you're just basically telling them, wait for the fucking forest to grow back, and then you can, like, harvest chestnuts. And, like, well, not even chestnuts, because the chestnut blight destroyed all the chestnuts, which was actually a very well-written part of the book where he explained the chestnut blight. But anyway, it's like they're just kind of like standing there, and then as often happens in nonviolence and sit-ins and things like that, they sit there and then they get beat up by the police. And they try and do something like better, like, they try and go and climb into the trees, but they don't climb fast enough, and the police beat their asses. At one point, it's kind of earlier on before they really come together. It's Mimi and Doug, and they end up being in the same area because some really nice trees that Mimi associates with her father get cut down. She gets pissed off, and then she meets Doug, who's like spraying graffiti everywhere to be like, fucking trees, you kill the trees, you kill us, man. And so they link up and they go to like one of these tree things, and there's like a whole segment where basically they're trying to stop the loggers from clear cutting like the really old forests nearby. And they get, number one, they get intimidated by the guys waving chainsaws as though like the loggers are going to like cut a person in half who's standing in front of them with a chainsaw, right? Like, I know, I get it. It's scary. The chainsaws are noisy and scary, but it's like, dude, like if you like, do you think they're just going to go and straight up murder a person with a fucking chainsaw? Like you're crazy. But they start to falter. The people kind of wuss out. And then they're like, genius idea. Let's climb the trees. They can't fell the trees if we're in them. And it's like, hey, they can't cut through you either. But I guess the police are showing up and they're arresting people. So let's get up into the trees to make it harder. And basically what happens is some people get up the trees. Some of them are too slow or fat or scared to get up in the tree. Mimi is too short, which is very funny initially. But Doug, the Vietnam vet guy, he gets up into the trees, and he's toughing it out. He's like, I don't care that they're gonna try and beat me up and stuff. Like I'm staying in this tree. And basically what ends up happening is there's a whole like multi-page segment where the police and like the loggers come up there and they try to like get him to like unhook himself from this tree because he's like cuffed himself to the tree basically, and that he doesn't have the key. And they cut through his pants. They rip his pants off and then pepper spray his balls for like 2 whole paragraphs while Mimi watches. And it's like, oh, cool, dude. I really, how inspiring. Like, I get it's supposed to be about how it's the hardship and of activism and the cruelty of these capitalist forces that we won't directly confront. And it's literally like it's like supposed to be like kind of a self-sacrifice moment, but instead it just is like it's a long description of Doug just literally getting his dick and balls coated in pepper spray for a full fucking page. And I'm like, and while I was reading, I was like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, this is embarrassing. Like, the actual activist, like, no actual activist who was a part of this was humiliated this fucking much. And no one was this fucking embarrassing about it. Right? And it's just, that stuck with me. I guess, you know what? As a literary piece, it's good that it stuck with me. But I feel like it stuck with me for the wrong reason. Because that was like the first of many, many embarrassments for this crew. Right? So eventually, while they're doing this, while Doug is getting his balls pepper sprayed and Mimi is being too short to fucking get in a tree, Nick and Olivia are off doing their own. They join a group that's trying to protect the ancient redwoods in California. And so they do that. They have a pretty, their team is a little bit more well organized. And so they're like real like eco warrior people. They're like, they have like organized like diversions to divert the police and the loggers while they go and like clip themselves to trees and other things. One that they're doing stuff. I think that at a certain point Mimi and Doug are kind of there as well, and that's how they end up meeting each other. The problem is that they all get tree-based code names, and so I kind of got that mixed up. So I don't remember exactly when Mimi and Doug and Nick and Olivia actually come together. But it's sometime like when this group kind of coagulates into like one big group to try and protect the literally like the ancient like spirit redwood. I forget what it was called, but it was called like Mom something, like Mamba or something like that, Mombi perhaps. But it's this big 900-year old redwood that Olivia is apparently communicating with, right? And so it's like, oh, this is like the big tree. We can't let them get to this tree because it's like the last bastion of this like really cool interconnected ecosystem. We can't give up this tree. And so Olivia and Nick volunteer to be people who climb up to the very top of the giant redwood, which was a tactic that actually in real life worked to some extent for at least protecting some of the major redwoods. Like there was at least like one woman I read about who held out. I don't remember her actual name, but she like held out for like months and months up there. And eventually everyone was just like, fuck, we can't intimidate her and we can't just go and straight up kill her by cutting down this tree. So that actually worked. In this one, doesn't work quite as well. Lots of pretty writing about how majestic this tree is and how it has a whole ecosystem of like newts and salamanders and amphibians and flying squirrels and things that like live in it, and it's like it's basically like a whole biome in itself, and it's just big majestic living creature. And yeah, Nick and Olivia are up there, and they're like, you know, they have sex. They're like kind of having a spiritual tree relationship, whatever the fuck. And it's like, and meanwhile, the other people down below are like, you know, trying to protect the rest of the grove by like, you know, hooking themselves up to trees. They have like this leader who's like this old hippie lady who doesn't let them do anything even like passively sabotage related. Like she doesn't let them fuck with any of the equipment. She doesn't let this guy, this one guy is like, oh, I wanted to like put spikes in the trees because like a tree spiking is something that more hardcore activists do, where it's like if you put a chainsaw on this tree, it's going to kick up all the nails that I put in the tree and you're going to get your chainsaw fucked up and possibly a nail in your ass. But their leader is like this old lady who never who doesn't let them do, is just totally committed to nonviolence. And it's like, okay, fine, cool, nonviolence. But you're still losing and all the trees are still dying. So it's like, okay, all right, cool. And they seem to have this philosophy where it's like, you know, we do this because it's self-defense of our world. And it's like, all right, if you actually believe that, I feel like some of you might be more hardcore, but you know what? You're under this, like, your leader here, and she's like a really nice lady and she seems to think this will work. Cool. But they're losing ground basically until it's all down to this one giant tree that Nick and Olivia are up in. And you know, they get different people come up to them, including like the VP of the logging company is like, we won't prosecute you if you come down. And she's like, I don't care. It's like, and then like guys come and tell her like, hey, you don't, you know, we can't be responsible to what happens to you if you stay up there. And it's like, oh, it's intimidation tactics. Okay. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Don't you dare try, blah, blah, blah. This tree is amazing. And they seem to like, to some extent, kind of, you know, persuade some of the loggers to at least see how like cool the tree is and stuff. And it's like, hey, you know what? That's good. You're at the level of the working people. And if you can get kind of them to not be so gung-ho about this, like that's something. You're not going to get the fucking sick fuck vice president of the holding company persuaded, but you might get some of the loggers. But that ends up not mattering, because even though this is like, you know, Olivia's had a near-death experience, she's like, oh, I don't think dying's worth anything. Because it's like I already died, and these trees brought me back for this purpose, to protect the big mother tree or whatever. And they're like, yeah, this is the purpose. We're gonna stay in here no matter what. Spoiler alert, this doesn't happen, because they once again get intimidated. Like nothing, even like they don't even get like, there was foreshadowing at one point where one of the guys who's helping them says like, hey, watch out for Caleb the Climber or whatever. It's like some fucking stupid name that, and it's like a guy hired by the company who's like a really experienced climber who basically just apparently has just been going up and just like subduing people and wrestling them out of the tree. And it's like, ooh, that's some major foreshadowing. They're gonna send that guy up there, and they're gonna and that's gonna make them realize like, ooh, how brutal and terrible this system is, where they'll just, they'll send a traitor basically up to take you out. I thought that was kind of the way they were gonna go. Like, oh, even like people who are like outdoorsy people like us can betray us, and that'll be kind of like their lesson that they take from that. But no, instead what happens is the police or like the logging company send up a helicopter, and mind you, before this helicopter comes up, they survive like a major windstorm that like they're like, oh my God, we're gonna get blown out of the tree. But then Olivia's like, no, you just gotta ride it out, man. And they do, and they get through the windstorm. But then for some reason, when like the loggers they're all set up down below, they got bulldozers down below the tree, and it's like, oh man, what's gonna happen? And then they send a helicopter up, and they send it over there, be like, get out of the tree or else. And it's like, and apparently, like there's a whole paragraph or two where it's describing this helicopter as this great beast that's just like unfathomable, belching pollution to the sky. And the company probably has thousands more of these, and there's thousands and thousands more around the world. And it makes them feel so small and so insignificant. And they're so scared of the helicopter, and like, I don't know, I guess they're gonna get the tree bulldozed. Like, they think they're gonna bulldoze the tree with them in it. But it's like, and then Olivia gives up. Olivia and Nick just fucking give up, even though they're like spiritually connected to this tree. Olivia, you were given a second chance in life to sit with this tree. And she just goes like, oh no. And once Olivia's done, Nick folds immediately, because he's just like an artist dude. He has minimal backbone except with Olivia. And, but yeah, for some reason, Olivia just gives up, and it's like, I don't know. Do you think they're gonna kamikaze the helicopter into your tree? Like, they can't land. Maybe they'll send a dude down. Like, the worst comes to worst, they'll send a dude down and they'll arrest you. But they're gonna like arrest you anyway, probably. But it's like, I don't know. Did they think that they're gonna bulldoze the tree down with people in it? I mean, maybe that's true, but like, I don't know. I just it didn't sit right with me, because it's like, oh, this tree, this is like a god basically, and it's like it's one that brought you back for this specific purpose, and then you get spooked by a fucking helicopter and like some bulldozers and people yelling at you. People have been yelling at you for like 3 months. I guess if there's like no more food and you think you're gonna starve or whatever, like I understand that it's like, it's a rough condition and stuff like that, but they were like making their own food and shit. Like, they were having a grand old time. And it seemed to me that, I mean, I guess maybe it just psychologically wore them down after a while. But like, seriously, like a fucking they fly a helicopter nearby and a guy's yelling at you, and that makes you break down and like just climb away from your spirit tree and let them turn it into mulch. Like, what the fuck? That didn't happen in real life. And in real life, hey guys, not to get political here, but in real life, governments and corporations do much worse things to people than fly a helicopter near them to get them to stop doing activism. And the redwoods on the West Coast were still saved to an extent, but apparently not in this fictional world of Robert Powers. They just fucking give up. They're the people who seem like the most fanatical, and they just kind of give up. And I'm like, oh, huh, whatever. And it was just like, it was like disheartening, and I get it's supposed to be disheartening to the reader. Like, if they win, then I guess there's no point to having the idea where it's like, oh, humans will be humans, but trees at least will live on after the humans. Like, because I guess that's the point of the book, that, hey, it's okay, we'll all die from climate change, but we're all going to die anyway. And so it's cool that the trees are going to live on, even though like we're going to kill a lot of the biosphere and stuff, but the trees will come back. And it's like, that's a thing that might be profound to someone who's like, doesn't know all that much about ecology or like the history of life on Earth or evolution or things like that. But to me, it's like, damn, dude, it took you 300 pages, or no, well, the total book is like 500 pages, but it takes you 500 pages to tell me that. And meanwhile, some of the other characters do pretty well for themselves. Patricia, the scientist, Dr. Westbrook, I believe. Like, she's Westerford. Sorry, Dr. Westerford. She does pretty well for herself because her research ends up being vindicated by some people doing forest ecology. She's just like, she becomes like a park ranger for a while because she just doesn't have another job. She almost kills herself and then decides it would be silly to kill herself over just some guys saying that her research was kooky. And so it's like, okay, good. Glad she didn't do that immediately. But her research is vindicated. She ends up being brought on to be a senior researcher in this research outpost. She meets like an older forest maintenance guy who ends up becoming her husband. And she does pretty well for herself. She ends up doing like a speaking. She does more like speeches and stuff like that. She does like a deposition in court that causes an injunction for logging. But unfortunately, on the activist end, once again, the activists have regrouped and they've made like a Cascadia free biozone where they've built like these fortifications and stuff to like stop the Forest Service from coming in and doing illegal logging. And it's like the court does an injunction, and the president says like, oh, it needs to stop, but the logging company decides to try and get under the deadline. And it's like, all right, guys, we just need to hold out for like 3 days. We need to hold out for like 3 days. And, you know, they have their fortifications and stuff, but eventually, like, literally, like, like 24 hours before the injunction, like, is like pushed through, the Forest Service shows up with all the logging people and like some police guys. And they all come in and they like start laying siege, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is gonna be tight. This is gonna be a hopefully they can hold out, right? They have people in like wooden and mud like barricades and stuff like that, and people in little forts and things like that. So it's like they're gonna try and hold out, but like they do that, and then I guess they just didn't think about like how long their fortifications would hold up against like digging machines, because literally like the first time a fucking backhoe gets over there, it just takes out half of their fucking fort. And it's like oh my god, 3 months of work ruined. And it's like, hey guys, what the fuck? If you had like half a year of prep, like why aren't you putting some fucking rocks into your wall, dude? Like what, you just made it out of fucking sticks? And they're like, wood is fucking stronger than metal. Like, are you guys fucking dumb? And then during this absolute rout where everyone just gets fucked because they like tear gas everyone, and they're like, oh, we wouldn't think they'd use tear gas and pepper spray, even though that's all they fucking do. And it's literally just every single time the activists, for some reason, underestimating their opponents, even though they know that all their other guys care about is money. And they're like, oh, well, certainly they won't hurt us this time, even though they've hurt us every other time. And like, it's almost like a weird abusive relationship where they're like, well, this time if we put up a little more of a fight, but not actually do anything that could stop a bulldozer, certainly it'll work. And it's like, apparent, I guess there are some people held out like in like a little underground thing, but like still ended up giving up like 8 hours before the deadline. And it's like, really, guys? Like, this is this, like, to me, it's like, Mr. Powers, Robert, this is the story you want to tell? You want to tell the story of activists giving up? Because it's not even like, in some cases, it's like, okay, some of them are like forced, like, okay, the police get them and it's just like they're beaten unconscious. But no one's like, actually, not really. I don't remember a passage. I might be remembering wrong, but I don't remember any point where it's like, oh man, the cops came in with billy clubs and just beat us until we were unconscious and took us away. No, it's literally just like, it's always stuff where it's just like, oh, the cops came in, gave us a little bit of pain, and we weren't prepared for any of that. And so people just scream and get like, oh, he pepper sprayed me. How can they pepper spray one who's just sitting down? And it's like, hey guys, the civil rights movement happened 30 years ago. Did you not do any research whatsoever into like any tactics or anything? There's every single time it's like, oh my God, I can't believe they would hurt us like this just so they can go and kill trees and make all of the money. It's like, yeah, duh, dude. What the fuck do you think is going to happen? Yeah, and an even stupider one was like the same group earlier on, they end up trying to occupy like one of the logging headquarters. And they do it for a little while. They end up, they like chain or like cuff themselves to like pillars inside the building. And the police come in and they're like, hey, unchain yourselves or we're going to start applying pepper spray. And admittedly, they do some fucked up shit where they literally or take like a Q-tip and dip it in like capsaicin, like pepper spray powder, and then just start like wiping it on people's eyes. And they're like, oh my God, how can they possibly be doing this? And it's like, well, guys, you like they've only been doing this the whole time, you know? They literally pepper sprayed Doug's balls for fucking half an hour. Okay. They absolutely seasoned his meat with pepper spray for fucking 2 whole pages. And you're like, no, how could they be using Q-tips with hurdy sauce on them to hurt our hurdy little eyes? Oh no. Ow, ow, I give up. And it's like, yeah, guys, shit hurts. That's how civil disobedience works. It's like no one fucking trained you for this. You guys didn't think, oh, we can get some pepper spray and like test it on ourselves because it's commercially available shit by now. Like mace existed in the 80s and 90s. It's not totally fucking like you can like try and like build up a tolerance to it so you're not wussing out fucking immediately. And like I get it. It's not supposed to be about the activism and like the activism working. But it's like it's such like a weird message in the plot. Like it's almost like it's like just a pattern in the plot that even if it wasn't totally intentional, it gives the message where it's like activism means nothing. Just let humanity die so trees can eventually fucking come back maybe. And yeah, it ends up being like all 5 of the people. Also Adam shows up at some point. And he's just like, he's there, he's doing like psychology research to study people who go against the grain, basically, on like, you know, like consensus opinions, like people who go against consensus stuff to do what's right. And which is like weird ass research prompt, but whatever. He's repressed himself for so long, he wants to get back into something he cares about, which I guess is trees. And yeah, he joins them. And but after their like final failure in Cascadia, they hear that like there's like kind of this implied stuff where it's like, ooh, it's implied that like the government or like corporations are also sending saboteurs to like fuck up the activism movement. And like there's some like, oh, mysterious arson that burns down a forest right before it was about to be put under protection, so that means they have to clear cut it because the trees are all burnt. Oh well. And so it's like, oh, the government's doing stuff like that to be like sneaky. And at one point, like their leader, who's like the non-violence lady, apparently quote unquote blows herself up, and no one believes them. And so it's like, hey, non-violence, what are you, an idiot? The non-violence lady, they blew her up basically. That was the idea, that like the government or some corporate sabotage guy came and blew up like the old lady leader. And so the 5 main characters, eventually they go to what to them is like their last resort, which is setting fire to random equipment sheds for like loggers and stuff like that. Which is like, hey guys, I know, I get it, it's like your act of defiance, but what the fuck is that supposed to do? Where the fuck is the organization? And that's like the main issue I have, especially with the activism portion of this book, because it's like it's literally just like activism and taking action, but without any organization or working with people. Like the main character trait tying all of these people together is basically they just have like this, they have like this teenager's idea of like, oh, I'm just totally fed up with humanity. I just can't even talk to a person about anything because they're all just so self-absorbed about it. And it's like, yeah, that's how like that's how like some of us evolved, but we're also a very collaborative species. That's why they're all working together to fuck you over. Like if you can figure out how to actually work together with people, or ooh, I don't know, maybe do some sort of labor organizing or something like that, where you're not just standing there getting your balls pepper sprayed for a fucking day and a half. That's still such a fucking funny scene. I'm sorry. I know it was like very traumatic for Doug, but Doug's not a real person either. And then, But yeah, the group, they end up, they do their quote unquote eco terrorism, which is just literally just setting fire to like fucking equipment sheds and things like that. And it's like, oh well, we can't, if we can't stop the machines, then we got to stop the machines before they're out there, which admittedly is a good idea, but it's a better idea if you're doing it while also doing other stuff. Because if you're just blowing up the machines and the rest of the movement is dead, then they're just going to get earth movers from somewhere else and keep bulldozing the trees. And they do. And this all comes to a head where they're blowing up like a big depot, and then they accidentally blow up Olivia as well. And so their main tree shaman is is killed, and then they all kind of blame Adam because he refuses to get help because he doesn't want them to all go to jail. And they're like, "You're a fucking scumbag, Adam." And he's like, "Please sure get there. We don't know if it would have mattered because she died pretty soon after." And so they all break up and they all go their separate ways. And I'm like, okay, that was tough. That was a rough segment of the book where all of their activism and even their quote unquote terrorism, they keep calling themselves terrorists too. And it's like, who are you terrorizing? You're doing sabotage. That's like normal. Well, not normal. Hey, legal advice, that's not normal. Don't do that. Don't. But like, they're like literally just like blowing up machines and stuff. And but yeah, they accidentally kill their friend, and then they feel so guilty about it. And it was like, oh, it didn't even accomplish anything. And it's like, oh man, oh, we did all this and it didn't accomplish anything. And it's like the very minimal self-criticism, other than like, oh, we shouldn't have done anything like that at all. It wasn't worth it. It killed our tree shaman, who, by the way, abandoned her mother tree, who abandoned like the tree that saved her life, essentially. So that's cool. So, but they all eventually none of what those four characters ends up doing matters for the next the last 150 pages of the book. The only thing that ends up mattering is Patricia's work, where she's doing all this research, and she finds that like the only people who really understand trees the way she does are like indigenous peoples in different parts of the world, and like certain other activists who are also labor activists. But once again, ignore the human organization part. Only do the part where they stood in front of a tree and then died. Like, basically ignoring half of the work of these activists to actually make lives for people better, rather than these higher order ideas about like saving the biosphere by protecting one group of trees. And yeah, but I mean, Patricia's pretty good because she goes and she does all this research, and she's like, wow, trees are so like they find a tree that's like literally in like the shape of a woman, and it has like a woman's face in it. And it's like, wow, that's crazy. Like, that's a crazy byproduct of evolution or myth or whatever, like myth and reality. Like, wow, it's just it's all so much bigger than us. And it's like, that's cool. And then she does her final act is to she goes to this like symposium for like fucking business industry leaders who are like, hey, can you give us like a quick fix type of thing for how to solve our planetary crisis? And she basically tells like, hey, she's basically like, hey guys, my husband just died. The trees are going to live long past us. They have a million things that are useful for us, but we're just not capable of working with them right now. So the best thing to do is to fucking kill yourself. And it's true. That's basically what she says. She doesn't say fucking kill yourself, but she does say that everything has its season and we need to like end ours or whatever. And then she drinks like a cup full of tree poison that she made from like tree toxins or whatever. And then it's like, it's not certain if she dies, but it's like, it seems like she probably dies, because it's like, that would be the end of her arc anyway. She's like already old by then, because at this point it's moved up to, around 2018, 2019, whatever. And so that's the end of her arc. But like, she actually at least did some good. Like, she got that injunction going. She inspired people. Like, her book goes through the lives of all the other characters. And then Nile is probably the other most important one, because he's doing all this programming. He wants to try and like influence people by making his games more and more complex, and seeing if people will like figure out ways to work with work with the environment in his game to like create a healthier world, and so maybe that'll change the world because he's getting inspired by like these like phantom trees that he's seeing as well. So he almost has like kind of an Olivia thing because he fell out of a tree and got paralyzed, and so that was his kind of near death experience where now he has this kind of connection with the trees. And so he's just been programming games this whole time, but eventually like it becomes a thing where he's like, oh man, capitalism's gotten away from me because now my board members don't want to make my fucking game all about tree graphics and making the trees more complex. They want it to have like the fucking... He basically builds like Civilization, like the Civilization game series, except it's called Mastery. So it's basically like Risk, but with more like environmental stuff you can do. But like, yeah, no one's interested in making that much because that costs money. And so he's basically just gets like voted down on the board. But I guess somehow in some way he's able to like divert enough capital within his company to essentially develops like AI. Like he develops like actual AI, which is that's how you know this book is kind of dated, because at this point this is supposed to be like roughly present day 2018 to like, I guess, near future. And he develops an AI and basically sends it like, go across the world and learn everything you need to know about trees and like the biosphere and the world around us and think about it until you get an answer. And that shit is so annoying because that's exactly like the type of shit that they market AI for today, except it's all like large language model bullshit. So it's just taking information that's already there. They definitely have AI that probably does something closer to what Niles wants to do, but they aren't going to use it to like calculate a fucking better world, which I guess is what he wants. It's like, oh, we're just sending them out. They're going to infect all the satellites and they're going to collect all the data needed in order to make a new and brave new world so life on this planet can continue and the trees can come back and shit. And it's like, damn, that's such like a fucking... To me, that's just such like a boomer cop-out fucking technophile ending where it's like, well, hopefully technology will save us. Or not even save us. He's like, oh, humanity will die. But hopefully our stupid fucking AIs can go and figure out a way to save the trees and like do like genetic engineering and stuff or something like that. It's all very technically vague. Or he's just like, yeah, hopefully this'll do something. And then, yeah, half of everyone else goes to jail. The Ray and Dorothy story, like, I think it's just supposed to be kind of a parallel where it's like, hey, some people who don't heed the call of the trees, like they end up just living like this kind of semi-miserable domestic life until Ray eventually has a stroke where he realizes his fucking patent lawyer career is like fucking stupid. And, he realizes it's so dumb that he's totally overstresses and just has a stroke that leaves him paralyzed. And then Dorothy eventually kind of falls back in love with him by taking care of him. And then they both end up finding meaning in life by kind of just turning their yard and their property into like a forest with like, you know, not mowing the lawn and like having all these native species there and stuff like that. And it's like, I guess that's, at the very least, they kind of arced it into having something kind of meaningful, because it's like, hey, even when life is hard, you have like, you know, you have the amazing connection to the natural world and nature. And it's kind of like transcendentalist stuff a little bit, where it's like, yeah, if you're part of something like that, then it's cool. And then they like die at the end or whatever. Fuck. The book, it's so like miserable for each of the individual characters. And it's like miserable in like such a needless way. Like for the arson and like possible manslaughter, Douglas gets picked up first because he's a stupid fucking old hobo man, and he wants to protect Mimi, and so he fucks over Adam because he's pissed that Adam didn't go get help when they blew up Olivia. And so he screws over Adam, and Adam gets arrested while doing a lecture or whatever. But he's like, he is such an annoying guy. He's like so irritating because he takes like a weird like cold calculated approach to everything, but he still has like a soft spot for the trees, which doesn't make any fucking sense. And it's to the point where like he has like a family, he has a wife and a son, and he's been arrested and he's facing 140 years in prison for like, I guess, eco-terrorism and then like manslaughter or whatever, which is like a thing that, you know, they'll do that, but like 270-year consecutive sentences sounds kind of fucking crazy to me. But who knows? Maybe Robert Powers has a better understanding of the law than I do. But yeah, eventually he's like in his like cell or whatever, and his wife is talking to him like, we'll get the lawyer, we'll do our appeals, and we can make a deal by giving up all the other people in your old group, right? We'll give them all away, and then you'll get a better sentence, and you'll be able to see your son again. And Adam's response to this is basically like, there's stuff that's bigger than my family. Fuck my stupid son anyway. And it's like, it would be one thing if it was like I love my wife and my son, but there's a bigger moral calling, you know? If he was like, man, I love you guys so much, and I hate to be your dad from prison, but there's a bigger moral calling where I think we did the right thing, and I want to stand by it instead of just trying to do my psychological manipulation stuff. But instead, he justifies it by being like, well, my wife is kind of a bitch, and my 5-year-old son wants to become a banker, so I'm cool. He's like, I hardly even connect with my son. And it's like, your son is like fucking 5 or 6 years old. He wants to become a banker. What the fuck are you doing? You're his father. You can like tell him, hey, become interested in this. You know, like, I mean, me in the real life, I didn't become a professional athlete, but my dad pushed me into sports, and my mom pushed me into like, you know, nature and getting into the outdoors and stuff. Like, you can influence your kid, especially at age 5. You think at age 5 and 6, like because he's like organizing his toys a lot, he wants to become a banker in real life, and now you're willing to just be like, fuck it, whatever, he's screwed, it's over. It's over for him already, my 5-year-old son, so I guess I'll just stay in jail for 140 years. Like, dude, I fucking hate Adam so much. He is by far the worst character. He's just by far. He's like an academic, but he's also like an idiot. And he's like, I find no connection between my son's obsession with organizing toys and my obsession with organizing and cataloging trees when I was a kid. There's no way my son just has like a kind of maybe a little bit on the spectrum special interest like I did. I just feel no connection with him whatsoever. So I'll stay in jail and stare at my wall. And it's like, you're fucking stupid, dude. You're fucking dumb as shit. You knew these other assholes for like 5 minutes, and they all hate you. And one of them already fucked you over. And it's like, for all of the activists, it ends so badly for all the activists. They're all just in jail or traumatized or dead or dying. Except for Nick. Nick is the only one. He goes and becomes just like a kind of an anarchist artist guy. And he just goes out in the woods and makes these like sculptures out of like living trees and like dead wood and stuff like that. And he makes like these big like art projects, and these Native American guys come and help him for a while. And that's like kind of the end of his story. But that's how it ends. That ends, everyone is in jail, dead, made AI, or in prison and dying, or is like, oh, well, fuck my family, I'll just die in prison. Like, are you crazy? That's how you want to end your fucking plot? And by the way, this is all wrapped up in some of the most beautiful writing you'll ever see. And that's what's crazy about this book. It does deserve its Pulitzer for like a lot of the themes and like the writing and stuff. But oh my God, this plot and the message it conveys is fucking crazy. It is absolute. It's like proto abundance shit where it's like, technology will eventually save us, hopefully. That's my hope, that technology after we are gone will help save our world. And it's like, that's such a, to me, it feels like a big boomer cop-out at the end. And it's like, I've heard that that's kind of how Richard Powers likes to go, because he likes to write about technology and the progression of technology, and how, because it's growing so fast, we won't know like what its implications will be. But it's like, I don't know. That is such like early Trump, like, oh man, things are as bad as they'll ever be, and we're all gonna die, but at least this will happen. And it's like, hey man, life goes on. 7 years on, the environmental situation is probably significantly worse. But I feel more, like politically hopeful, because at least people aren't doing like your bullshit where it's like, I'm gonna stand in front of a tree and then get sad when I get pepper sprayed, and then just fucking go and die in prison. Like, that sucks. Like, I'm sorry, but that sentiment sucks. And maybe I'm stupid. Maybe I misread this book in some way. But to me, that's a fucking dog shit message. Kill yourself or do environmental activism and then kill yourself. It's not going to matter either way because a smart guy in a wheelchair is going to make AI and the AI is going to make the trees better or something. Like, fuck's sake, dude. Like, you could have wrote like a bunch of nice stories, or not even nice stories. It could have been like bittersweet, sad stories, but it could have been more focused on the trees as well. Like, I thought it was going to be more about like kind of speculative near future where like we have like the species, because of the actions of these people together collectively, ends up like leading to like a human awakening or something, or more awareness of the trees, or the trees do something like crazy, like fucking biobomb Manhattan or something with a bunch of poison seeds or something like that. And it's because of something that like the tech guy did, you know, some crazy shit like that. Not like, oh, well, you blew up a couple of tractor depots and then our friend died. And then the scientist lady found really cool stuff about trees. And then Nile made a really cool game, and that's about it. And it's like, man, that's lame. You know, if you're going to make a 500-page book, go the extra mile. Make it 650 pages and at least give it a fucking cool ending, you know? I don't know. I feel like it was a thing where he had these ideas. Like, he probably had like a Dan Simmons Hyperion idea initially, where it's like, oh, these characters coming in with their individual stories and it comes together and weaves an interesting tale. And that would have been cool enough if he had just bookended it with the right frame story. I think that probably could have been its own thing. But no, they hasn't. Oh, they're all coming together and they're all doing activism and failing at it and getting their balls pepper sprayed. You ever got pepper spray on your balls? No, it sucks. Yeah, okay, cool. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, okay. So it does. Maybe I'm overreacting a little bit. But it's just sad to see in like such a book with such high quality writing and some characters that were like very, very interesting, for it to have kind of like this plot that feels like really contrived, almost like really just like, I bet eventually the idea is going to be that the best thing we can do is kill ourselves. That would be like edgelord stupid shit. But it sort of seems like that's what it's going to be. But this guy's a really experienced author. He might be the Cormac McCarthy of our age. Maybe he'll subvert my expectations by having it be something totally different. But no, it didn't even really go into the future. I thought it was going to be kind of eventually be like a near future thing. Like the Bone Clocks was one that was like pretty cool about that. That was a different book that was, I believe I reviewed it a little bit. I honestly think the Bone Clocks executed it much better, and it wasn't even a book totally about the environment, but it had elements of that in it, and it went a little bit into the near future where there is an apocalypse, but it still ends with like some hope and stuff like that. But this just like stops at like our present day and is like, well, hopefully AI is getting started and that'll make the world better and be like they'll be like better than human minds could ever be, and so therefore they'll be able to solve the problem. Like, for fuck's sake, dude, that is some absolute fucking boomer shit. Like, stick with writing about, like, I don't know, the playground or the three boys walking to the fucking... I need to read some of his other books because I feel like he can do better than this, or at least hopefully stick the ending on a plot a little better than all the characters died and half of their actions had no fucking meaning. And so you just listen to them bitch and complain and get their balls pepper sprayed over and over and over again. And then Mimi gets like, oh, by the way, at some point, this is why it's a wild book. You need to still read it. Just get it from the library or something. But like Mimi eventually gets like these semi-psychic powers somehow because she has a near-death experience when the Cascadia fort gets bulldozed and she like falls out of a tower and gets her face like fucked up by like a piece of rebar. And so she gets like disfigured, and then she becomes like a weird like psychotherapist where she like looks into people's eyes and then can like speak with them telepathically. And then this isn't useful in any way for the rest of the book either. Like, she only does it just so you can like because she goes to like the symposium where Patricia drinks poison, and she like locks eyes with her for a minute and then like understands her thought process before she does it. And it's like, hey, guys, we don't need that. We just read her thought process. She's a point of view character too. We don't need Mimi to do her fucking psychic mind meld to figure out what Patricia already told us earlier. Anyway, read the book for the pretty language and for the tree knowledge if you don't know that much about trees. But if you know anything about ecology or environmental history or class warfare or sociology or anything, there's probably bits of this book that will still be interesting to you and will probably be worthwhile for reading. But overall, goddamn, I mean, that ending and that plot is a fucking bummer for the most part, with just a couple springs of hope where it's like, oh, maybe this will be good. Like, it's not like I don't believe in technology, man, but having technology be technology and then like killing yourself and leaving behind a forest in your backyard that the city is going to bulldoze anyway. Like, wow, what a fucking inspiring, what a thing to aspire to as a person. Or maybe it's all like kind of ironic. Maybe it's all kind of ironic because the guy, he does seem to want to critique capitalism somewhat, but not actually in a way where it's like, hey, what about a different system? He's like, no, man, no system, just trees. It's like, okay, well, I guess that's what happens. But it's like, it was almost like trying, the way that I can sum it up, it's like, he's trying to make a piece of environmental fiction, but with the least amount of politics possible. Just only environmental sentiment and like kind of some transcendentalism elements and science, but no politics. Just like purely for the love of the trees, man. Purely for the love of the trees. So if you're in that, if you're into things purely for the love of the trees, you're gonna fucking love the Overstory. Although you are gonna hate some parts. But I hope you also get joy out of Douglas's balls getting pepper sprayed for a while, because that was a kind of unintentionally funny bit. Also, he goes a little bit too long describing Olivia's breasts for at least a page at one point earlier on in the book. But that's a thing that's been covered endlessly by nerds on Reddit who are like, r/men writing woman, he describes her breasts weird. And it's like, yep, that's one page out of the 500 of insanity. But hey, if you want to read any of that shit, go to your local library, because they're definitely going to have like 4 fucking copies of this book, because it was huge for a while. If my dad is reading it, that means your dad's probably reading it too. So yeah, you'll know where to find it, and give it a try. I just wouldn't spend money on it because it's going to cost like $40 because it's a huge ass book with an intricate cover. So yeah. That's my review. Just read it from the library if you want to read some pretty stuff. But the message is bullshit. I'm sorry. Message is outdated, certainly. But also it's kind of bullshit in general. Bullshit. All right, that's about it. Thank you for listening to this episode. I hope that it was insightful in some way. Or leave me a comment. Let me know if you like this kind of hate-oriented content moving forward. Because listen, I can draw from an endless well, man. Especially when it comes from pretentious writers. Just don't ask me to do it for like racist reasons. Don't be like, hey, critique Between the World and Me, but talk about how the plot is stupid, because it's like, that's not a very plot driven one, and I'm not going to do it just so I can be cathartic for you. But if you like hearing me rant about stuff that's pretentious, then leave me a like, leave me a comment. Leave the podcast a like and comment at OTNT podcast on Blue Sky, on Mastodon, on YouTube, on Instagram. Coming soon to probably other stuff. I say that every time, but it's pretty hectic right now. But we are getting back on track. This has been recorded less than a week since the last one, so I'm gonna count that as a win. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.